I think we're looking at what's a solid base of things that we can pull once a month, whether you're a brand, whether you're an agency, across all of your accounts, so that you can have just a consensus of what's going on in your account. You're probably launching new campaigns, launching new keywords, new products throughout the month. The statuses of these types of mixes and things we'll look at on the next slide are going to change over time. And so that's why we'd really recommend keeping this core list is something we look at every month. But then, like you mentioned, Sreenath, there's probably an expanded list of things that past this that you guys can continue to look at on a less regular basis as well.
Appreciate you all joining. Today's topic, audit or be auditor, is a great term, perhaps more applicable for agencies in the room more so. The idea being, brands as well as agencies, you're constantly auditing all the time, evaluating how things are going. What we're going to do today is, of course, we think it's very important, but we'll walk through what the essential elements are of the just basic foundational elements, give you examples, and at least give you a starting point around how to think about them and how to make them a standard operating procedure, which we think is super valuable, whether you're a brand or an agency. That's the context of today's presentation. We'll have some time for Q&A along the way. Just keep asking. We'll keep this informal, and we'll pick up questions along the way, and we can save some time at the end as well. Just one other comment on Accelerate. Like I said, booth 35, you can find us there. And if you're not attending, we're going to do a bit of a recap webinar with all summary of all the announcements and some of the things we are doing in response the week after. So just keep an eye out for a message about that webinar as well. With that, Kenton, let's dive in. Yeah, we'll tag team here on some of the content, but why do we do audits? We simplify this from our perspective, from Intentwise perspective, to say, hey, audit should be done with the goal of either finding opportunities that increase ad efficiency or finding opportunities that help you expand reach with the same advertising dollars. Those are the primary goals. The question is, how do you do it? We're going to break down the outputs that will support each of these goals. So if you go to the next slide, let's talk about increasing efficiency. There's a few things. By the way, we are going to call out about 7 assets in terms of analysis that we call foundational. That's not the end game. There's many more things you could be doing, but step 1, establish that as a baseline layer. And the reason why we have identified those 7 is because these are till date. It is 2025. I know many of you are advanced advertisers, but even today we find opportunities in these 7 buckets. So under increasing efficiency, there's about 4. Campaign type mix is really how much money you're allocating to sponsor product, sponsor brand, sponsor digital. What does that mix look like and compare to benchmark? You understand brand versus non-brand, search term opportunities, and then of course, campaigns running out of budget and what the implication is. So I would put those under increasing efficiency.
And I would just add to that, I think, we'll see another 3 on this next slide, but like you mentioned, I think we're looking at what's a solid base of things that we can pull once a month, right? Whether you're a brand, whether you're an agency, across all of your accounts, so that you can have just a consensus of what's going on in your account. You're probably launching new campaigns, launching new keywords, new products throughout the month. So the statuses of these types of mixes and things we'll look at on the next slide are going to change over time. And so that's why we'd really recommend keeping this core list is something we look at every now and every month. But then, like you mentioned, Sreenath, there's probably an expanded list of things that past this that you guys can continue to look at on a less regular basis as well.
What happens if you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
These ones are hopefully self-explanatory, but gaps in keyword match types, we see this a lot. Gaps in keywords between one campaign type and another, sponsor product versus sponsor brand. And then the last one is the most fun one and the most prevalent one, especially if your catalog gets large. There's always ASINs that are not been advertised. And when we ask the advertiser, hey, is that by design? A lot of times, no, it's not. I didn't know that we were not advertising. You want to avoid those gaps. But if you notice the 7 we listed, it is the nitty-gritty. We're not here talking about, ACOS, sales and tacos. That I'm sure you're looking at on a daily basis. The thing with especially search advertising is that there's just so many levers. Nitty-gritty matters and matters a lot. And so what we'll do in the next set of slides is go through very specific examples on several of them. Okay.
Yeah. I would just add, like you mentioned, Sreenath, like these are things we see. So we're doing audits all the time, right? Our team is looking at brands every week we're looking at different brands from a performance perspective that we're working with, that our partners are working with, and these are things that we consistently see across the board, and opportunities that a lot of advertisers are going to run into. So hopefully, at least a few of these unlock a few opportunities for you guys as we walk through them.
I'll call out that for all those Intentwise users, like some of this already shows up. Several of these actually show up under recommendations tab. Just FYI, you can go check those out. But we're going to make this much simpler, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the webinar. So this is just very simply, I mean, on the left is a mix we have traditionally seen where you've got the mix of ad spend in sponsored ads, sponsored products, sponsored brand, sponsored display. Usually we have seen a 70-20-10 mix. A lot of times brands are kind of within that range, but we've also seen some anomalies. Like there are brands that just don't do any sponsored brands campaigns or some other situation, no sponsored display. It's important to just figure out how far off from the benchmark you are and why. I mean, maybe sometimes it's deliberate and that's okay. But if it's not, you have to be in the know. So that's the objective of campaign type mix analysis. Brand versus non-brand, this is my favorite one, to be honest. And what happens here is, it's one thing to look at keyword level spend and classify keywords as brand or non-brand and look at numbers. But what that does is it actually doesn't account for non-brand keywords that drive brand searches because you haven't negated the brand term on several campaigns. And or you've got a chunk of spend going to sponsor product auto campaigns and you've got search terms there. So the key is to look at brand versus non-brand at a search term level. That's one. And make non-brand ACOS an operating metric. But this is a very simple brand versus non-brand across all your search terms. Of course, you have to have a definition of what a brand term is. Again, if you're an Intentwise user, we let you define those. And in fact, on the keywords tab, you can automatically roll up brand versus non-brand. But this is a super important output to have on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to add, I think, having those performance metrics is definitely beneficial. And then I think there's a reason we're showing this mixed type of graphic as well. I think you often could see in a brand where that branded percentage of spend starts to take up more and more and more. And maybe there's some cases where that's ideal, but you're often going to see that, maybe like you mentioned, Sreenath, looking at non-branded ROAS or ACOS as an operating metric, you might sort of see, okay, my performance is improving, but that just could be because your percentage of spend that's branded is increasing over time. And that might not be something that's actually incremental for your brand. So not only looking at performance metrics individually, but looking at this split on a regular basis is going to help you get insight into how performance is truly trending over time.
And the key point here is do it at a search term level, which accounts for any non-brand keyword to brand search overlaps, as well as auto campaigns where you have no concept of keywords. Yeah, I mean, for all you advertisers, I'm sure you're doing this all the time, search term analysis, and broadly there's two kinds. You will find search terms that are underperforming, and you'll find search terms that are outperforming that are not trafficked as keywords yet. On the underperforming ones, like I think a lot of times we have our own criteria. For example, I mean, Kenton's rule of thumb is $25 to $30 of spend on a search term, and you've got no revenue. Those we would classify as underperforming. And outperforming, again, I'm sure you have some sort of an ACOS or revenue threshold, but the idea there is like on a constant, regular basis, knowing a bunch of terms that are doing well and have not been trafficked.
I think the key on the outperforming one, Sreenath, that I would just add is that high performance, but they're not something that's added as a keyword. And that can be something that's tough. It's just in the ad console. It's something that if you're an Intentwise user is super easy. There's a filter in our dashboards that's keyword does not exist anywhere. It does not exist as a keyword anywhere in the account. If you're not an Intentwise user, you could always download your keyword report and search that list for the search terms you're looking at, or do some type of VLOOKUP comparison. But I think that's another key is not only high performing, but things that are not added as keywords. And then that becomes an opportunity for, hey, I'm going to put this as an exact match now. And that's often going to be the time where you can start to push 25, 30% more spend towards that keyword to see that performance increase a little bit more over time.
Yep. Next slide. Yeah, I mean, this one is classic. You've got budget constraints on campaigns and campaigns are running out of budget. What you see is a trend line of like, okay, over a 30-day period, how many campaigns have run out of budget. On the top right, you see high performing campaigns because basically campaigns meeting a certain target ACOS threshold. You want to just see that and ensure that adjusting those budgets can help your ad dollars go much further and efficiently. So super important point of view to have on this on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, because you could be spending, if you're spending $10,000 in a month, $20,000 in a month, whatever you might be spending, that's split across 50 campaigns. More likely than not, you have 10, 15 campaigns that are really driving the bulk of your performance. If those 10 or 15 campaigns are running out of budget and you have some lower performing campaigns that are maybe more experimental, that, are remaining in budget throughout the day, not that we would go about causing those campaigns, having those experimental tactics is important, but oftentimes one of the easiest performance unlocks you can have is looking at, okay, over the past month, what is running out of budget, and just allowing that to spend at a higher spend through when you have those larger campaign loads within an individual account.
So this is, again, it's bound to happen where you have keywords where there is match types missing. So you may have a broad match keyword that's doing well, but both exact and phrase are missing for it, and whatever the case may be. Identifying a list of keywords, how big is that number, and looking at match type gaps. In our audits, what we try to do is we don't try to surface missing broad match keyword as a recommendation. What we do is, hey, it exists in broad but doesn't exist in phrase or match, or it exists in phrase, doesn't exist in exact. So those are the three scenarios we account for in surfacing, and we recommend in surfacing opportunities, especially those keywords that are hitting a performance threshold.
Yeah, I think this is, again, similar to like the search term when we were looking at, right? You probably have performance against terms that you're not don't have as an exact match anywhere. So I don't have the ability to specifically control my spend, my bids against that individual term. Same thing for if it was being picked up as a search term. And having that extra layer of control where I can say, for Nike running shoes, as you see in the example here, this term did amazing for me. If I look at my search term report, by individually adding that as that exact keyword, that's where I can, 50% increase on my bid there, because that's the term that's really driving that performance within the overall phrase match.
Yeah. There's a question here. Would you recommend having all three match types for every keyword? What I'd say is lots of broad match can blow your budget. So certainly, in fact, even if you look at your spend mix, typically, I mean, I'm not suggesting that should be the case every single time. A lot of money should be going to exact, followed by phrase, then followed by broad.
I would say the key that I would look at is making sure that your broad keywords are separated into an individual campaign, or otherwise you're going to start to see them oftentimes cannibalize the spend within the larger campaign, and there's limited spend going towards the exact targets that you entered. So by putting them in a separate campaign, you can also limit that budget a little more tightly. I don't know as if you have to have every single keyword, right? Because a lot of your longer term phrases are going to get picked up there. But having your core focus keywords in a more experimental campaign, and almost treating it like an auto campaign where you're trying to find new targets from your search term report to send over to, phrase and exact, like we're doing in this process, would be how I would go about it.
There's the other opposite end of the spectrum question, which is it okay just to have exact match? I, for one, don't recommend that. Then in my opinion, severely underutilizing certainly phrase match. Now, if you're very, very budget constrained and all of that, maybe you go that extreme. But I would say exact and phrase should be in play, and use broad for discovery, and be careful about how many of those are in play so that your budget don't go crazy.
I would say you could probably avoid broad if it came down to it, right? If you're at that budget constraint. But I think phrase, at least in a experimental secondary campaign where you don't have to be pushing a lot of spend towards it. That's where, again, I look at segmenting it into its own campaign so I control what that spend is. But it's going to be another great place alongside like an auto campaign to find what those new keywords are. And especially for like a challenger brand where you're going to see a lot of your best performance on those less competitive keywords, those longer tail keywords. You're not going to know what all of those individual targets are. And there's going to be new targets every week, every month that people are searching. And so having those phrase and auto or even broad match ones are going to be the best way to discover those. And then those can be, the high performing ones can be added, as those exact matches. And I think it comes back to that process we were talking about earlier of finding those high performing and low performing terms. I think that's an important part to be layered onto using a phrase or broad match to make sure that you're not spending on terms that aren't performing for you, because those often can be pulled in there.
Just one more note. I think this is, it's probably most of you are aware of this. Exacts are more competitive. Your CPCs generally will be higher. Phrases are less, CPCs lower than exact, and broad are the lowest CPC. So there is a balance here in terms of CPC. You can go all exact, but your CPCs tend to be higher. So there's a balance of CPC versus intent. And I don't think you want to be on one side of the spectrum or the other. You want to be somewhere in the middle, balancing your budget and efficiency and the intents you're going after. Yeah, this one is like one of those no-brainer things, which is you've got keywords performing really well in one campaign type, just completely absent from the other. Now, there's no guarantee that they'll perform the same way in the other, but it at least mandates a step to activate them. And of course, you have these dynamic bidding algorithms also in place. So it's not like you put a keyword there and a bid and it stays there and burns up your budget. Like you need to have an efficient algorithm or a bid management system, reducing the bids if things are not working. But here's another thing that we have noticed in many accounts: great performing keyword in one, completely absent in the other. Bhumika, there's a question here. Where can I see that? Under the recommendations section, you will see that if you have keywords performing well in one but absent in the other, it'll show up on the recommendation section. You can download those keywords and choose to act on them. One of the challenges with it, of course, is as a system, we don't know where a particular keyword should go among your sponsored brand campaigns. But that's where we are also investing in AI to make that process simple, to figure out a textual similarity and match between this new keyword and what exists already in the campaign and simplify that process. That's in the works right now. But at the least, you can get that list of keywords from the recommendation sections today, and B, hold off till the end of the presentation.
I was going to say, hold off a couple more slides and we'll have answers on how we're going to make this all easier for you.
Yeah, so ASINs by campaign type, by far, I think this is probably the biggest opportunity I see, especially if your catalog gets large. I rarely see an account where this specific output doesn't produce some numbers. This is very simply, I've got ASINs not activated in certain campaigns. Now, sometimes it's by design, right? Like for whatever reason, you don't want to advertise the product. But looking at your full catalog, seeing what is driving overall sales, and looking at how are they activated in different campaigns, finding if you find the gaps, go close them quickly. It's just easy sales opportunity provided the products do okay, right?
Yeah. And I would call out two things here. One, I think you're going to find that you can't just look at your current advertisations here, right? Because we often find that there's brands that have products that are performing well that aren't even advertised at all. And maybe it's because when you've set up your ad campaign, they weren't performing well, but over 3 months since you last set up your ad, they've gotten a lot of performance. So we want to look at it down to a total product level, looking at total sales as a factor of this. And the second thing, I think you'll notice in this image here, we're not just looking at, okay, does this present in sponsored product and sponsored display? We're looking at, do I have an auto campaign against it? Do I have a keyword campaign against it? Do I have a product targeting campaign against it? And making sure we have strong coverage. And just because like I'm not necessarily seeing performance in one of these, right? If I have a campaign that has really strong total sales, but maybe it's not doing great in my keyword targeting campaign, that doesn't necessarily mean I shouldn't test it in product targeting, because it could be more of a factor of the keywords I'm going after versus the product itself. So we still have opportunity to test it against these other campaign types in these scenarios.
And the main point here is this: if there are gaps, ensure that they are intentional. Okay.
I think across all of these, right? Make sure this is really the design of doing this on a regular basis is not necessarily that these are all going to be things that are wrong, but making sure that you're doing them on purpose.
Yeah, so I think we covered, I think, all 7 of these things today. Again, they are foundational. They are in the weeds, but that is exactly the point. Now, the key here is you don't want to sit there and pull this data manually all the time. Again, if you're Intentwise user, several of these show up as recommendations in the platform, and or you can go to, let's say, keyword tab and look at data by match type and so on and so forth. To make this a standard operating procedure, like what do we need to do? Like you got to automate these things. You have to then just have a discipline to look at it on a regular basis. And then what's going to happen is we listed 7, but there's so many things we didn't talk about, like evaluating your search query performance report, brand
analytics data.
share of voice. I mean,
placement level data. Yeah.
I can list 50 things here. The point here is like lock down your process with the 7 or maybe 8 that we have called out, and then start to expand so that you don't leave any single opportunity in the account. So this is what needs to happen.
Yeah. I think that process part is important, right? Like if you don't have a system to say, hey, I can look at these 7, or maybe there's 1 or 2 that are different for you from your brand's perspective, that I can easily look at these, give me an hour and I can look at these every month for my brand. Right? Then expanding past that isn't going to do you any good because we won't be able to look at it on a regular basis. Whereas the true value is going to come from is that consistently seeing how are things trending over time, taking a snapshot of the past month, because these numbers it's not a one-time thing. These numbers are going to consistently change and open up new opportunities for you.
What would be awesome is if you took audit of, today is September, right? You took audit of July and you took an audit of August, put them next to each other and see if, things have gotten better or worse, right? So that's a practice you can get into, provided ideally you want to automate this, right? So with that, yes.
With that, we're going to talk about how we're automating this for you. So all of the modules we walked through today, we're actually, as Sreenath mentioned, we're in San Diego working on a hackathon this week. And one of the things that we've been working on is building out a way for you guys to do this all, if you're an Intentwise ad customer, to do this all automatically.
Or an analytics customer, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So we're building a system where on demand, I can pick whatever date range I want, whether that's the last month, the last week, the last quarter, and pull visuals and data across all of these points. So you can see, here we're looking at campaign type. There'll be a performance table at the bottom. So this is going to be something that we're launching in the next 2 weeks or so, and it'll be live for all Intentwise customers so that you can continue to take all the processes that we walked through today and have an easy way to implement them, because we think it's a really important opportunity that most brands and agencies have and might not be fully taking advantage of. The one thing I'd call out is the things you're seeing here. There's 1 or 2 that we didn't talk about today, like placement type of analysis. That'll be launching in the initial app that we're putting out. But like Sreenath mentioned, once you have a system down to automate this, the next step is expanding that list and looking at more and more metrics on a regular basis. So that's what we're going to be doing as well. This list that you see here of things that you can audit in your account will continue to expand over time. So if you guys have ideas, if you guys have things that you're looking at on a regular basis that, hey, this is something I'd want to audit every month or every quarter, let us know and we'll work to have as a part of this tool in the future as well. Sreenath, anything you wanted to add here?
Yeah, no, I think those of you that have attended will send out a communication about this.
Yeah, actually, I'll be launching real quick a poll here before we jump off. If you just want to mark yes in that poll, as this tool is released in, say, 1 to 2 weeks, we'll reach out to you about getting access set up so that you can start to take advantage of it. So just mark yes in that poll that I just launched, and we will reach out to you shortly.
Of course, if you don't know what Intentwise is, we have 3 products. We have the ad optimization platform designed to help you accelerate your optimization of ads. We have a complete data automation reporting solution. And if there are agencies in the audience, you can launch a client-facing white label solution within days. And then we also have a solution that sits on top of Amazon Marketing Cloud designed to dramatically accelerate your adoption. And by the way, by next week, we have some awesome features releasing on all 3 of these.
Yes.
If you are at Accelerate, swing by. We'd love to show you those. If you're not, let's connect on the next webinar, and happy to walk you through what we have been up to.
100%. Lots of fun things next week. We'll have highlights of them all throughout the booth. We'll have some different things we're doing around AMC. And if you're not there, we'll be sure to keep an eye on LinkedIn, keep an eye on our socials or our email if you're on our newsletter list. And we'll be sending all of our announcements that way as well.
Time for questions, maybe, Kenton?
Yeah, we definitely can take a couple minutes for questions. If you have any questions about anything we walked through today, please feel free to throw those in the chat or in the Q&A, and we will hang on here for a few minutes to answer those. And I guess while we're doing that, I'm going to throw a link in the chat here. If you're looking to learn more about the Intentwise and what we're doing, we should be throwing a chat up for our Intentwise community in here. That's a great way to get connected with everything going on with Intentwise. If you're not currently a part of our community, we announce all of our webinars we're doing. We announce things like what's going on at Accelerate, and then just general industry updates and things like that. So if you're not connected with us there, thank you. Would appreciate you guys jumping in there, or would recommend you guys jump in there to start to take advantage of the offers that we're putting out there as well.
Also, if you like the content today, leave us a comment or any feedback. We'll take those too. Angel, thank you for your comment. More to come.
We had a question from Chris in the Q&A, Sreenath, about should we show negative keywords that are blocking positive keywords? That might be an opportunity to remove that negative.
Oh, I think this is a fantastic point, and sometimes you don't even know what positive keywords they are blocking. Chris, I think, let me say a couple of things. First, we should take this as a feedback point into the audit output. But broadly, let me repeat the question. Chris is asking, how about showing negative keywords that are blocking positive keywords and an easy removal of that negative? I think this is an extremely valuable point to make, which is there's just a lot of pundits out there that preach and talk about active negative matching. And while I get why that gets said, it is one of the easiest things where you can shoot yourself in the foot, because all it takes is some sort of a phrase match negative, and then it completely shuts down a bunch of demand. So I am absolutely not a fan of aggressive negative matching ever. And I think it's important to go evaluate your negatives on a regular basis. Chris, but we will take this as feedback to figure out how do we best surface that. Don't have an immediate answer, but certainly something we can add as part of the audit outputs.
100%. We got another question in the chat from Ara about how much does ad type allocation or a benchmark change for advertisers that start using DSP? Should we shift sponsor display spend to DSP or split budget between sponsor display and DSP?
This is a great question. I think at the root of it, this boils down to an understanding of what is sponsored display versus what does DSP do that is different. I think sponsored display, so first of all, I personally think you should max out sponsored display before you go to DSP. I don't know if Amazon will like me saying this, but you should max out sponsored display before you go to DSP, because there's so many capabilities. You can target audiences, you can do so many things, okay? DSP serves a different purpose. The reach, the control, all of those things is where DSP plays a super important role. For example, targeting in-market audiences and seeing what your penetration is against them. Those are the types of things you can do through DSP that are difficult to do through sponsored display.
Yeah.
So it is not about splitting budget. It's actually about having the right objective with your DSP spend, and having a large enough objective. If you're going to take $10,000 and put it in DSP and try to see an outcome tomorrow, that's a challenge, right? So there is some sizes of budgets as well as understand what is you about DSP versus this that has to be into account. Very clearly, in my opinion, it is okay. Let me split sponsored display. I don't think that's the right answer.
100%. I've been launching starting to be but I'm others that are on sponsored ads that aren't reaching the performance metrics that you need, and you're forcing yourself to spend more there than you need to. And the second point is a DSP is not driving sales today. DSP is helping us drive a sales a month from now, 2 months from now, right? And so we need to look at it from a different angle. And so there's definitely areas where we look at the two together, right? We could look at Amazon Marketing Cloud and see how is DSP affecting what we're doing on sponsored ads. We can look at our total sales over a month across the two and find out what our overall performance is. But when we're breaking down, like an audit of our performance, an audit of our setup, I would almost look at them separate more than I look at them together. There's areas to look at them together, but I think individual analyzation, because you probably we should have different goals behind them, is super important too.
I'll add one more point here. One of the ways I've encouraged our clients to look at DSP is not as an alternative to a sponsored ads option, but as an alternative to all other media spends you as a business do elsewhere, okay? Because I think that like the level of targeting, and you probably saw the announcement yesterday that Netflix, you can advertise on Netflix through DSP also. So I just think that the level of targeting you have through DSP to build upper funnel awareness is at this point probably far better than other options you have for awareness building. Because I'll tell you the argument DSP will never win is, hey, will this do better than my sponsored product campaigns? never going to win. The answer is always no. But if you're maxing out your lower funnel and you're going to have to build your brand, which means your brand searches have to go out, that's not coming out of you doing more on sponsored product. So I long-winded answer, but I just hope we got some clarity on that, on your question. Tom, how are you? Tom has a question here. In the industry, what is the % of DSP ad spend versus paid search? Is it 60-40? Tom, candidly, I don't know what the benchmark really is yet. What I'll tell you is that we have seen accounts where the number is 50-50 to 50-50 as in DSP versus search ads, to 90 sponsored ads, 10 search ads, to there's a bunch of accounts that just don't do any DSP. What I'll do, Tom, is because we want to understand this number too. I think it varies by segment quite a bit. I'm going to take that back to see if we can get some detail on this.
Yeah.
So we take that as a to-do, Tom.
And sure enough, I would just add, like, I think it's important to know what that benchmark is, but I don't know what impact that should have on the decisions that you're making, right? Because we're looking at those as separate goals. I wouldn't necessarily say, okay, great, the industry split is 60-40, but my split's 80-20. That means I need to push more spend towards DSP. That may not, I think you need to get down into thinking about, okay, am I more focused on long-term growth than I am on let me get sales this week? And if that's the case, maybe that you need to make that shift, but it's not, then being more towards DSP might be the right fit for you. So I think, and oftentimes in that scenario specifically, it depends a lot more than, a sponsored product versus a sponsored brand might.
The thing about this is where I think for this audience, there'll be some more announcement around Amazon Marketing Cloud next week. But I really think that I hope like you all should just invest in building your muscle around Amazon Marketing Cloud, at least understanding what is in there, and so on and so forth. For example, like you can take, Amazon Marketing Cloud usually has 12.5 months of rolling data, right? You can take people that are exposed to DSP in like 3 quarters out and see what they do with your brand over a period of time, and expand your windows of measurement as to whether this has been useful or not. So I know I'm deviating from the question about spend allocation. I would just add that like getting really dialed in and understanding AMC so you can measure DSP at its finest grain is also going to help with this quite a bit.
I think that's a good point. I think AMC is becoming more and more important. I mean, you mentioned the Netflix announcement earlier. If you read deeper into that, Netflix's data or from Netflix data coming from DSP is also now a part of AMC. So now I can use AMC if I'm advertising through DSP to look at Prime Video and Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu and more things like that are going to continue to come, where AMC becomes an essential part to bridge the gap between different platforms and how you're advertising across them.
Here's one more point I just want to make. I mean, I guess I'll answer a question that is not asked. Right? Like one of my learnings from watching ad spend in our space over the last 6 years is that when you cut the advertising noise out as a brand, from my perspective, there is 2 proxies for whether or not a brand is doing well, right? Are your brand searches going up? And are your organic ranks and BSR staying stable or going up? I think we have to measure and hold our ad spends accountable in some capacity to those 2 metrics, because if those are not going up, you'll continue to pay too much to acquire that customer. And so this is where I think, where does DSP help? DSP should be increasing the number of brand searches that are happening for your brand. But I think I think it's important, in my opinion, to have that clarity of thought and hold advertising accountable to changes in those core metrics. Otherwise, advertising will never work.
100%.
Let's see what else. Great questions. Appreciate the engagement.
I think that's all the questions we had, Sreenath. So unless anybody else has any questions they want to throw in last second, I think we can wrap there. If you do have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can email us, just kenton@intentwise.com or sreenath@intentwise.com. We'd love to hear with you, hear your ideas about audits, answer any questions you might have. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And then again, if you're at Accelerate next week, stop by. If you want to set up some time to meet one-on-one, we're happy to do so as well. More than happy to do so. We'd love to do so, and look forward to seeing everybody there.
I think Keith here will agree we have the best t-shirts in the world. So we have some t-shirts at the conference. So please swing by.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.